everyone, my name is Yakshmipriya and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be trying out a new paper. This is by Hahnemuhle Agave Watercolour Paper, and it is actually a watercolor block, which is the first time I'm using a watercolor block. And I'm just basically doing something very simple. This is for anybody can do this illustration or this painting. I'm using watercolors for this one. All the supplies I'm using will be listed in the description box below. So I'm starting off by wetting the paper and I'm going to be doing some simple flowers. So anybody, a beginner, can do this piece, and it's going to be, I'm going to work through the entire piece as I'm working, as well as telling you about this paper. So I start off by wetting the paper, and I use a lot of water on this paper, and this paper can hold a lot of water. I am drying the layers in between with a hairdryer, but as you can see, I'm able to add a lot of water. I'm able to add the color and get them to blend and even get them to spread. So you can see when I add the color, it spreads quite nicely to get that background colors, and then I'm going to slowly build up the flowers in the front. So I was just wanting to test this paper out because I purchased it and I wanted to see how it works with watercolors, and I did notice that I'm able to do multiple layers, use a lot of water, and the paper, because it's on a block, it doesn't buckle much, and I'm able to dry it in between layers with the hairdryer. I'm not having a problem with the paper tearing or with over blending. If certain areas I go too much with water, I'm not having a problem. If I have if I apply color and I'm not happy with a certain area, all I do is I just got to take a paper towel and just dab those areas that I'm not happy with, or that are too much water, or if it has too much color, just lighten it up, or even just stroke it down on the paper and wipe off a certain amount of color if the paint is still wet. So you can see I started with the background. Now I'm just starting to get some of those background branches in the background. I don't want it, you see over there, I just wiped it out with the paper towel. It was too thick. I just thinned it out with the paper towel, and that's what I really enjoyed about this paper, is that you can fix mistakes. As long as the paint is still wet, you're able to fix the mistakes quickly and get them to you can correct the mistakes and you get them to be the way that you wanted them to, or you intended to. So you can see I've just got some random branches going left and right. I'm not really paying too much of attention to them. These are just going to be in the background, so they're much lighter, so I'm using more water with my pigment of my paint. But now I'm coming with the more foreground branches, and those are more thicker and more darker because I want them to be more on the focus when I'm going to be doing the flowers. So now I'm starting to put in the flowers. I'm just basically drawing in these little round spots or round patches of paint, different shapes, different sizes. I'm not doing any details at this stage. I'm just trying to get the shape of a flower, more or less. These are cherry blossoms, so I'm not really looking at putting too much detail in them. I just want to get the image, even if they don't look really like a cherry blossom. I was just testing out the paper. I was not trying to do something realistic. I just wanted to try out to see if I can get the look of the flowers, and just to test the paper and see how much the paper can actually take. But you can see I'm just layering colors or splotches of a little bit of pink, and I am going to refine that and go through it later on and add more and more layers on top of that to really refine it and to make them look more like flowers. But you can see where I'm going to now. I'm just starting to get just the placement of where the main flowers that are going to be more in focus are going to be, and then obviously the pinks in the background will be the ones in the distance that are blurred out. So once again, I'm just going through with some of that branches in the background, some of them in the foreground, lightening up some of them just to create that impression of branches in the distance. And I am just now going to start working after I dry this layer. As I said, I'm drying the layers in between my layers. I'm drying with a hairdryer. That just speeds up drying time. Now I'm using a darker yellow color. It's sort of a yellow ochre, and I'm just basically putting in all the stamens of all the flowers, not really paying a lot of attention to it, just looking more or less at the angles. Remember, the flowers are all not facing one angle. Some are hanging down, some are hanging to the left, some are hanging to the right. So the stamens will all be facing different directions as well. So you can see I just started adding those to all the flowers, and now I'm starting to just add more darker pinks to the flowers to just get more of a flowery shape than just the little splotches of color. So you can see I'm starting to add more color to them and more darker pinks to really bring out those flowers. I am going to add more details a little later, but For now, I'm just darkening up some of the flowers because I want them to really be a focus when you look at the piece, because that's the focal point. So I'm just bringing that out in this piece as I'm working through the different flowers. So you see, I'm working one flower at a time. It's a very simple exercise. You can see I started off with just little blotches of color, and now I start just adding a little shape to it. So if you find a reference photo with some flowers that you would like to paint, or cherry blossoms in this case, then all you got to do is just look at them, look at the shape of them, and just get a similar shape. It doesn't even have to look exactly like your reference photo. That's a good thing with flowers. It doesn't have to look identical unless you want it to look identical. It doesn't have to. If you're learning, if you're trying to just get the feel of painting with watercolors or using watercolor paper, you can just try out and see how they work. You can see as I'm building up the colors, they're really starting to take the form of the flowers, and you can actually see that they are flowers and they're overlapping one another. So you can actually see where the flowers are, one is over the other. It's not just looking like one entire just splotchy pink like the background is looking. It's not looking like that because I'm really refining those shadows. Now remember, that's another thing. You need to look at your reference photo that you're using just to see that where are the darker areas, where are the shadow areas, which flowers are darker or lighter. Remember, it's not only shadows, we're looking at the different colors because light is hitting flowers from different angles. So you may have light hitting from the right, so certain flowers on the right will be lighter than the ones hitting from the left, which are more in shadow. So all of that you need to look at your reference photo to see what it has. But remember, it's just about having fun and creating. You're not really looking at creating something hyper realistic. For this piece, I wanted it to just be very loose, very relaxing, and just a depiction of some pretty summery flowers, all like the little bright cherry blossom flowers that are just all around. And I was not really looking to make it very realistic. So you can see again, I just started adding here and there some stamens to some of the other flowers, and now I'm just going in and darkening some of those flowers again. As I said, I'm building up layers slowly, one layer at a time, and I'm starting to refine some of the flowers, not all of them, only the ones that are going to be really in the focal areas, as well as I really want to create a differentiation between them, overlapping one another. So that's why you can see I'm putting some darker colors on some areas. So if you do put the paint down and it goes darker in some areas and lighter in some areas, that may even help you to achieve this look without even trying to make the area dark or light. Because when you apply the watercolors, because it's mixing with the water, some places may gather a bit thicker and may look a bit more pigment and have more saturation than certain areas which should be lighter. So it will create that variation in the petals, because all the petals are not identically one color. They have variations depending on the light source, depending on the angle of the light, as well as the petals themselves of the flowers. Now, like I said, this is not a hyper realistic illustration. It was just something to test out the paper, but at the same time I wanted to show you that you can do a very nice drawing or something simple, but you can enjoy the process of drawing just by creating something simple like this. Start off with little splotches of color and you can turn those into flowers. It doesn't even matter if it looks like the actual flower or not. So at this point I put a lot of layers of paint on this paper as well as a lot of water, and I noticed that it can withstand a lot. I'm still not getting any serious problems with buckling or anything. It is a block, I know, but you still can get a certain amount of buckling. But if you do use a hairdryer as well, it completely flattens out. You don't even have any sort of sense of buckling in it once you dry it out. As well as I'm not getting the paper peeling or the paper getting scratched off as I'm adding more and more water. So I can work on areas and rework areas as well, and I'm not having any issues. So now I'm just going in and darkening some of those stamens and some of the centers of the flowers as well. So I just want to really bring out those stamens, but once again, not all the flowers, and also paying attention to the direction the flowers are facing. Remember, all of them are not in the same angle and all of them are not facing the same direction. These are flowers, they're all over the place. So just bear that in mind when you're doing any illustration of flowers where there's many flowers. So now I'm starting to really define some of the petals. You can see I'm really adding some differentiation between the petals, just so you can see the different petals here and there, but not in every flower, just on the focal flowers that are going to be in the focal area of my piece. And now I'm just drying over the entire piece with a hairdryer. Just want to make sure everything is dry. And then I decided now I wanted to remove it from the block because I want to work with some color pencil and see if I can use color pencil on this paper as well. So I'm using a palette knife. This is a squarish sort of palette knife, and I'm just gently, on the top of the paper you'll see there's a little section that's not glued down because the entire block is glued all around. So on the top there's a little portion that's not glued down. That's where you start off from, and then you just slide in the palette knife like I'm doing on the side, and I'm slowly moving it through to remove the sheet, and it's not causing any damage to the sheet underneath or the piece that I'm actually working on. So you can see I just move the paper above a bit, and then I slide in the palette knife and I just slowly pull it to the right just to remove it from the block of paper. So you can see I'm just removing the other side, and there we have it. So you can see it removes very easily with a palette knife, and I am using a rounded squarish palette knife, so it makes it easy to remove. And you can see the paper is quite straight, there's no buckling or any issues with the paper. It's very thick paper, and you can see the paper underneath, the sheet underneath has been untouched. It has nothing wrong with the paper underneath. So even though I used so much of water on the paper, I had no issues with that. So now I'm going in with some color pencils. Now I just wanted to see how this responds to color pencils, and if I can work with color pencils on this paper, and the answer is yes, I am able to use color pencils. You can see I really started darkening up some of those branches in the foreground, and the color really shows through. I'm not having any issues with the color, maybe not the paper not taking the pencil. I'm able to add layers over. I'm even able to add lighter colors over the darker colors. Like I did apply some darker brown, and then when I went over with the green, you can actually see the green over. So it's a really nice paper. It can take color pencils, it can take the watercolors. So it's definitely a paper that I have enjoyed using. I have used a lot of watercolors in the past, and different papers as well for color pencils, and definitely this one does work with color pencils as well. Obviously it does have a tooth to it, so you use a watercolor base and then you do color pencil over, it'll work without the paper showing through. Color pencil on its own may have some of that white showing through though. But all in all, this paper works well with color pencils and watercolors. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.